I have Sandtown, Winchester as my community. So its neighborhood location and boundaries. Sandtown, Winchester is a 72 square block community in West Baltimore. Its zip code is 21217. It's surrounded by Harlem Park, Easterwood, Midtown, Edmondson, Penn North, Upton, Madison Park, Heritage Crossing, and Coppin Heights. I've personally never been to Sandtown, Winchester, or any of the surroundings. I don't really go to Baltimore that often. The only time I've actually ever been to it is driving through to get to Towson. So it's a part of the Baltimore City Public School District, and they have some of the following schools within Sandtown, Winchester itself. Like the neighborhood itself, they have New Song Academy, William Pender Hughes, Harlem Park, Gilmore, and George G. Kelson. New Song Academy, I believe, is a private school. It teaches grades kindergarten to 8th grade. And then for high school, you actually have to venture out of the neighborhood. So you have Frederick Douglass, New Hope Academy, and Paul Laurence Dunbar, which are a few of them that surround Sandtown, Winchester. There's a lot more. I think a lot of them are private schools, some of them are trade schools, but you actually have to venture out of Sandtown, Winchester to find these schools. Its history: Sandtown was a welcome place to live prior to the 1960s. I feel like this is true for a majority of the neighborhoods, including some neighborhoods down by me. It just, things happen, places change. Riots in the 1960s was specifically one of the reasons why Sandtown started falling, population-wise. As you can see from my photo, I've included the percent change from the population from 1970. 2 years after those riots, the population just dropped. People left, people didn't want to be there anymore. And during these riots, businesses were looted and they just never reopened. I mean, how would you? You lost all of your merchandise. You have nothing to sell. That's a lot of money to try and cover for. Because of this, because a lot of businesses went out and never reopened, people lost their jobs. And because of this, drug use and the selling of drugs became common, and that's what you did, and that's what you do to this day to make money. Violent crimes are also very high to this day. The population has continued to decrease since the 1970s. Compared to Baltimore itself, Sandtown has a very low population. Beginning in the 1980s, people had tried, city officials, people who love Baltimore, citizens have tried to repair the neighborhood, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of love, and they've invested about $100 million into the neighborhood, but it's still just not going anywhere. During the 1980s, the use of crack was at an all-time high. It's still at an all-time high. There's a lot of people in Sandtown, Winchester that are recovering addicts from the 1980s. During the 1950s and 60s, however, during this time, because Sandtown was the place to be, it was the Harlem of Baltimore, a bunch of famous people were there, such as Billie Holiday and Diana Ross. But a few years ago, in 2015, we all know the tragic story of Freddie Gray, who died from police brutality, and the riots that happened in Sandtown, which has continued to degrade the town. And because of this riot, there's a image of police in this town, and a lot of the citizens will tell you that police presence to them is harassing, and that's absolutely okay for them to have because of what happened. This hit at home for them. This was in their neighborhood that this happened, And I think one of the ways that needs to be reformed is the police presence. The police presence totally needs to be reformed. They've lost the trust of the citizens in Sandtown, and that's going to be very hard to gain back. So, some demography, 3% of the community's population is in prison. It's the highest of all of Baltimore neighborhoods. A third of the houses in the neighborhood are abandoned. That happens because the population just keeps dropping, and so there's no one to live in the houses, there's no one to take care of the houses, so they're abandoned, they're falling down, they're boarded up. Along with this, the rate of rats are rising. There's a lot of rats because there's a lot of empty houses. There's a lot of places for them to flourish and for them to breed, and so of course naturally Sandtown's going to be infested with rats. Only 15,518 people live there. That's the average. The life expectancy is 10 years below the national average because of the drugs and the homicide. And they have a high rate of infants that die because they're just underweight when they're born. So there's a lot of things going against them. So Sandtown is consisted mostly of women. They come in at 55.2% compared to the men 44.8%. Of this, the family in poverty is 50.3%, and of that, single parent households are at 86.8%. So you can imagine that there are some mothers and fathers, single mothers, single fathers, or husbands and wives that are really struggling because Sandtown is below the poverty rate of all the nation. They're very, very poor. They also have a high youth homicide mortality rate of 68.4%, which is very tragic. There's a lot of teenagers dying, and most of them do not graduate from school. Most of them probably don't even make it to high school. The economy, so the average home price in Sandtown is $25,263. The median home price is $16,000, and the state itself spends nearly $17 million just to incarcerate its former residents. More of a fifth of the working age residents are unemployed, which has a reason because there's no jobs there. There's just nothing there. It's like a ghost town. Nearly a third of the families live below the poverty line. The drug trade has flourished, of course, because there's no jobs. So if there's no legal ways of making money, of course the residents of Sandtown are going to go to the illegal ways of making money because they have to feed their kids somehow. They have to feed their own addiction somehow. A lot of them are addicted to drugs, and they are selling drugs at the same time. The median household income is $24,374 compared to Baltimore City, which is almost $20,000 higher. The percentage of unemployed people are 20.7%, and most of them don't have health insurance. Naturally, no money, no health insurance, and what are you going to do? So some cultural elements, 96.7% of the population are African American, 0.8% are white, 0.4% are Asian, 1.3% are some other race, American Indian or Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander. This makes sense because there was once a trail that went through Sandtown that American Indians walked on, so it would make sense if some of them had made home in Sandtown. 0.8% identify two or more races, and 0.4% identify as Hispanic or Latino. People who report speaking English less than very well is 1.3%, and there's a very low rate of them that have graduated and gone to college, and there's a very high rate that have a high school diploma or less. And during this time, during 2009, African babies were 5 times more likely to die. because of low birth weights and dying during sleeping. And so available resources. There are some things that the Baltimore City Health Department are still doing. They put these in place in 2009, 2007, such as Safe Streets, which relies on community members who are trained to de-escalate and mitigate conflicts that may result in violence. Since then, 888 conflicts have been resolved. So that would have been a lot of deaths or a lot of harm done to children, and it's just, so that's one of the good available resources to them. They're trying to do healthy corner stores, which are trying to reduce child obesity, be more for healthy babies, which has given support to mothers, babies, and families to help the rate of infant life. Lead poisoning prevention, there's a lot of people dying of lead poisoning, so they're trying to prevent and aggressively reinforce their regulations. On top of that, they're just trying to teach the youth healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy communities. So stay away from drugs, stay away from tobacco, stay away from anything that will possibly harm your future. Odd enough, as I talked about, there's low infant birth rates, but the leading cause of death in Sandtown is heart disease. And I think that's why they're trying to, as children, show them healthy eating ways and healthy ways to take care of themselves, healthy minds, healthy bodies. And in return, that will boost the population, because right now it's heart disease, cancer is number 2, then drugs. Drugs comes in at 3 at the leading deaths in Sandtown. My brief evaluation of observed needs of the community and whether or not the resources are available to meet those needs, they're not. I think a lot of people have tried, a lot of people have failed. It's just, I think Sandtown itself needs to be observed, and they need to ask, what do you need? What can we do to help? Because a lot of people, when Baltimore put all these actions in place, felt it wasn't doing anything, felt it was overstepping. So I think if the community isn't going to go along with it, it's not going to go anywhere. You need to do what the community wants. And one of the steps I believe that needs to be taken is help the community be sober. Get rid of the gangs. There's the Bloods, there's the Crips in Sandtown. Sandtown is overrun by drugs, and that needs to be the first step. Get the drugs out. Help these people get clean. It's very hard, and it's going to take a lot of hard work, and we've already put so much money into it, but it's going to take a lot more because now everything's free. Once you get rid of the drugs, now you need to help get the businesses back in, because people need to make money the legal way. This is not going to happen because businesses don't want to be in neighborhoods that are overrun by gangs, because the gangs control the businesses. So it's a bunch of dominoes. Once you knock one domino over, everything should fall in place, but that is not as easy as that seems, and I think it's going to take a lot more years, and either Sandtown's going to continue to fall, or a miracle is going to happen and Sandtown is suddenly going to flourish one day, and people are going to start moving back in, and businesses are going to start moving back in, and people are going to be sober, and it's going to be a nice place to live again. So the goal is for it to be that wonderful place that it was to live in 1960. And I have my thoughts on it. I've given you my thoughts. I'm sure there's other people that have other thoughts, because a lot of citizens have given hope. It's kind of the best neighborhood I can compare it to is Ellicott City. A lot of businesses have moved out of Ellicott City because Ellicott City keeps flooding. In return, Ellicott City is on its downfall, but businesses are slowly coming back. They're slowly rebuilding. And my main point is, it's going to take a long time. It has been decades since we've tried to reform Sandtown. And I believe it's going to take a few more decades to get Sandtown back on its feet. But if you want the people to flourish there, you have to put in the money and the work. And I think Baltimore City and the state needs to realize that and needs to put the time and effort into it to help these people out.